Hi grade 5s. I just thought I'd hop on here very quickly to go over some of the work in the spiral book yesterday that some of you might have found easy or some of you might have found a little confusing or challenging. So thought I would go through a personalized video today to hopefully clear up any confusion that you might have. All right, we're gonna go through 3 types of questions here that you would have seen. They're all pictures. So right now we take a look at this first picture and we take a look at the whole fraction as well as the shaded part of the fraction. This fraction has 4 columns of 4, which is 16 little boxes total. Our denominator, the bottom of number in the fraction, always represents the number of parts that we have. The numerator, which is the top part of the fraction, represents how many of our whole is shaded in. So in this case, we have 4 shaded in out of the 16 parts. We call this 4/16. Now, this lesson is focusing on equivalent fractions, and I mentioned before that the word equivalent means equal. So in this lesson, you're trying to find equal fractions or equivalent fractions to 4/16. So what fraction means the same as 4/16? Just like 2/4 means the same as 1/2, I created that poster yesterday to show you all the ways we can say 1/2. Half is kind of easy, but we get a little bit more complicated when we get into the bigger fractions. So in order to find a fraction that is equivalent to 4/16, we can use a picture or we can use multiplication or division. We're going to start with a picture. So in this case, we have 4/16. You can see that 4/16 is also one whole row out of the 4 rows. So you've got one whole row shaded in and 1, 2, 3 other rows that are not. You've got 4 total rows. That's why you have 4 as a denominator, but you have one whole row shaded in. So 4/16 is equivalent to 1/4. And we call 1/4 the simplest form of this fraction because we can't get any lower than 1/4. 1/4 is the lowest possible fraction that we can make from 4/16. It's called simplest form. All right, another equivalent fraction to this is not just looking at the picture, but we can use multiplication or division. In this case, because we are using 1/4, we can multiply the numerator and the denominator by any number we want to get an equivalent fraction. As long as you are doing the same amount at the bottom as the top, then you will get an equivalent fraction. In this case, I want to multiply both numerator and denominator by 2. 1 times 2 equals 2. 4 times 2 equals 8. Therefore, 4/16, 1/4, and 2/8 are all equivalent. I can go further. I can continue multiplying both the numerator and the denominator by 2. I can choose 3 if I want. I can choose 4 if I want. I can choose any number to multiply the numerator and the denominator by if I want to, and I will still end up with an equivalent fraction, just as long as you're doing the same to the bottom as the top. So I'm going to try 2 again. Numerator times 2, denominator times 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 8 times 2 is 16. Notice I got the same fraction as the one I started with. That just goes to show you that by multiplying the numerator and the denominator by the same number, you can get an equivalent fraction. All right, let's get smaller now. I want to show you that you can also divide. So if I have 4/16, I can divide by 4, because 4 goes into itself. I can divide the denominator by the same amount, 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 16 divided by 4 is 4. I just simplified my fraction to lowest terms by 1/4. I did the same thing here. I got the same fraction, But again, that just proves to you that by multiplying or dividing by a number that's the same, you will get an equivalent fraction, whether it's a smaller fraction or a larger fraction. Okay, when I say divide the top and the bottom by the same number, I can't just pick any number all the time to divide by. You've got to pick a number that the number is divisible by. So I could not do 4 divided by 6 because 4 does not divide into 6 equally. I can't do 16 divided by 6 because 6 is not a multiple of 16. I've got to pick a number that divides equally into those numbers. I know that 4 is a multiple of 16. I know that 4 is a multiple of itself. So I've got to pick a number. So we've got 4/16, 1/4, and 2/8 all being equivalent fractions. I can show it in a picture, or I can choose a number to multiply the numerator and the denominator by. This is a different kind of fraction. It's shown not in rows and columns, but using triangles. But we can still find the fraction of a picture. If we take a look at this picture, we've got 3, 6, 9, 12 triangles. So we know that we have 12 parts in our whole, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4 out of the 12 parts shaded in. So if we wanted to find an equivalent fraction to 4/12, we could also group this picture to show an equivalent fraction. We could group the shaded triangles together in a more organized way so that we can see our reduced fraction. So in this case, if I move my orange triangles all to one column, we can see that all 4 triangles would be in one column, which visually you can see that 1/3 of the picture is shaded in because one whole column out of the 3 columns are shaded in. Therefore, 4/12 is equivalent to 1/3. If we wanted to find another equivalent fraction without using the picture, we could do a little trick that we talked about in the last example. We could multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number. In this case, I'm going to choose, let's say, 3. If I multiply the denominator by 3, I've got to multiply the numerator by 3. 1 times 3 is 3. 3 times 3 is 9. Therefore, there's another equivalent fraction to 4/12. 3/9 is equivalent to all of these numbers. So we've got 2 examples of equivalent fractions. I could go further and get another equivalent fraction by multiplying the numerator and the denominator by the same number. I could also divide the numerator and the denominator by a number to reduce this fraction to lowest terms, which I can see here that 1/3 is the lowest possible terms that 4/12 can go because we can't get a smaller number than 1. If I wanted to go further and pick another equivalent fraction, let's say I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by 3 again. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. 9/27 is another equivalent fraction. If I wanted to go further, I could, but most of your examples in your workbooks ask for 2 equivalent fractions, but you can keep going on and on and on, and you can find many equivalent fractions. Another part in your work asked you to model or draw equivalent fractions. I noticed that a lot of you were drawing circles or different pictures to show equivalent fractions, but they really weren't showing the proper, you weren't really showing the proper way to show equivalent because some of your circles were not split into equal parts, some of your bars were longer, and some of your bars were shorter. You can't really do that because in order to show equivalent fractions, your pictures have to be the same size because a fraction is a part of a whole. It's like if I have a whole apple pie, that's a big pie, and a small little tiny apple pie the size of a tart, if I split my little tart in half, and I split my big pie in half, I'm going to have half of each pie, but my small little pie's half is going to be much smaller than my big pie's half. So even though I'm showing half of an equivalent fraction, or half, and comparing both of my numbers, the sizes of the pies are not equal, so it's not an accurate comparison. So that's why I always use bars to show my fractions, because bars are a lot easier to split into parts, equal parts, rather than drawing circles. So in this case, I've got two bars that are the exact same size. I want to show on my pictures that 4/6 and 16/24 are equivalent fractions. I'm going to show this. The reason why I know these are equivalent fractions is because I can think, how does 4 get to 16 and how does 6 get to 24? I know that 16 is larger than 24 and 6 is somehow getting larger to become 24. So my numbers have to be multiplied, because when you multiply a number, your number's going to get larger. So how does 4 get to 16? 4 times what is 16? 4 times 4 is 16. Well, the rule of equivalent fractions, whatever you do to the top, you got to do to the bottom. So if the numerator is being multiplied by 4, that means the denominator needed to be multiplied by 4. Well, 4 times 4 is 16. 6 times 4 is 24. Therefore, they're both equivalent fractions. Now we know they're both equivalent. We're going to show why they are equivalent using the bars above. So to make your drawing accurate, make your drawings the same size. I like to split my bars into half. That way I can make my parts of my whole accurate. So the first bar I'm going to show 4/6. So that means I've got to divide my bar into 6 equal parts. So that means 3 parts on this side, 3 parts on this side. So I'm going to do my best to divide my picture into 3 equal parts. On both sides, 3 plus 3 is 6, so now I've got 6 equal parts. I can go ahead and color in 1, 2, 3, 4 out of the 6 equal parts. All right, then I'm going to show why 16/24 is equivalent in my picture. So again, I divide the same size bar in half. Now I know that I need to color in 16 parts. So I need to divide this side into 8 sections and this side into 8 equal sections so that I have 16 total. In order to make 8 equal sections on this side, I'm going to split that half in half again. Then I'm going to split this half and this in half. Now I've got 4 equal sections, but I know I need 8. So I'm going to go ahead and split all of these little sections in half again. Now I've made 8 equal sections. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing over here. Half, 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 and half. There we go. Now I've created pretty accurately 24 equal parts. Now I'm going to go ahead and color in 16 of my parts. So I know halfway, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Oh, I've got 16 parts. Sorry, I'm supposed to create 24. I was wondering where I was going wrong there. So again, I got to go in and split all of those in half again. Woo! Was wondering where I went wrong there. So now I've got 24 equal parts. So now I can finally go back and color all 16 in, and you can see here 16 out of 24 is the same amount of space as 4/6. And you can tell why they are equivalent, because they're covering the same amount of the whole. Anyway, I hope this helps you out, and we are moving on to mixed number fractions tomorrow. Have a great day.